So if you have to duck out early or want to recreate our drawing tonight, our painting tonight, you can always see the recording on our YouTube channel and paint it again or paint it with a friend. So I think that's all I have for announcements. It's good to have you back, Victoria. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. If we're all ready, then just if you have yet to open your paint kit, if you do open it, you'll see that there are quite a few individually wrapped paints, and it would be a good idea to start getting those to be unwrapped. Um, on the case that you haven't touched it at all, the paint colors that we definitely need unwrapped for tonight are the red and pink, the yellow and brown, this mustardy yellow, and the black. So that is what we are definitely going to need. And if anyone has any questions, please let me know. I'm just going to flash on the screen real quick what we're going to paint tonight. We are going to paint this little Valentine's Day cupcake here.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody has any questions during the class, just come off of mute and let me know. And if I ever hear any like dogs barking in the background, if I ever mute you and you ask something and I didn't answer, see if I muted you. And it's never a problem to come back off of mute. And other than that, we will get started. So here is my piece of paper, and I have it vertical. And I'm starting with my pencil, and I'm just giving a mark at the bottom of my paper here. So I do have some room. I've got about 2.5, 3 inches of room. And once you have that marked down, you can start to add these lines on the sides.
Do this. You do your stuff.
So I'm building up those edges of that cupcake. And that looks to be about good. I do want to make sure that it is slightly curved at the bottom. Just gonna take a second and erase the lines that I don't need anymore. All right, so this looks to be about a good base, I'm thinking. So I'm going to start connecting it across at the top. You can see I'm still kind of messing with what I have so far, that's fine. That's why we have an eraser. So that is our kind of foil of our cupcake. And I want to come on in. I'm going to zoom down for this so that you can see. Come on in and start giving it these little shark tooth type edges. And I'm going to take just a minute to erase any extra line that is cutting through them. And you can start by doing the creases in the middle here. And I'm just very lightly with my pencil connecting those down points from that crinkle at the top to the bottom. Now, it's nice to start in the middle doing it because those are going to be a little more straight up and down. Whereas when you start to get to the sides, it will start being a little bit slanted. That's going to make it look like it is curving around. And I'm going to give everyone a minute to clean up their lines if you need to. Almost done with our drawing. And for this next part, this is the actual cake. Now we are gonna come over this top part that we're putting in, but that's fine. We are doing this so that we can know where it should be sitting. So just do it lightly. I'm doing it a little bit darker so that I can make sure you can see it on your computer screen. And once you have that down, you can start doing some bumpy lines for the bottom of the frosting. And once you have that first section, you can come on back and erase that line that we don't need anymore in the middle of it. Then I'm adding a second layer in the same way. Just letting it sit. I'm using this line as its bottom. So I only had to do the curve and the top. And lastly, one more section. And if you liked that big heart as the little decoration topper, you can throw that on in. Just take a minute to fix anything you need to. here is my drawing. I've got some room in the background, which is fine. We will do something with that. And just make sure you're liking everything. If you need to make any changes, now is the time. But I'm pretty much good now. And just a reminder, the colors that we absolutely need are these red and pink, this mustardy yellow, and the brown, and the black.
Victoria,
Yeah.
how do we make black again?
Oh, there's a black in your palette.
Nope.
There's not a black in your palette.
No,
we have
Or
a
some
burnt
of us- some
umber
of-
and a burnt sienna.
yeah, some of us had black last time and some didn't.
Okay, if you don't have the black, then we'll mix it later, but it's that burnt sienna and the blue, that ultramarine.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Alrighty. Okay, so I am ready to start painting this, and I'm going to take my bigger brush, and I want you to take a little bit of both that orangey red and that pink and mix together a color. And I'm going to show you the difference on a little scrap paper. So alone, both of these are, this one's just too orange and this is too pink, but together it makes this nice kind of vibrant looking red, and that's what we are looking for in that color mix. And once you have that, you can start getting this cupcake wrapper wet with the water. So this is the wet on wet. And very lightly, once you have that whole thing painted with the plain water, I want you to tap in a little bit of that color that we mixed. Very lightly, like I said. And once you have this first light layer on here, check and see if you still have a nice amount of that color. If you don't, and you maybe need to mix a little more, which is what I'm doing right now, that's totally fine. And while it's still wet, but it's not terribly wet for me anymore. And I can tell that because the paper is a little more matte in its shininess. You can come in at the bottom and it's the same color that we put on first. I'm just making it darker by dipping my brush into more of that paint. All right, now I'm going to stop messing with this now. And I'm just going to clear out a little section in my palette. And if you ever need to do that, I'm just taking water on my brush and giving it a little scrub and it cleans right out. So what I'm gonna mix in this little spot that I just cleaned out I want to take some of that yellow ochre, which is that mustardy looking yellow. And dab a little bit of my burnt sienna, which is the color that is that brown. As well as a little touch of the black. Now, if you don't have black in your palette, I will help you mix that. So you can just hold off on that last step here. If you don't have the black, you can mix that dark blue and the burnt sienna. And that gives you a black. And you can then just tap that into your yellow ochre mix. So this was optional. This black was just if you didn't have a black already in your palette, but everyone should have this yellow color mixed. And I want to start by bringing just some plain old water into my bottom frosting layer. And while it's still wet, gently, very gently, tap in that yellow ochre mix. So this is what I like to call painting with dirty water because it doesn't look like we're doing much because we're painting white. Again, I know this does not look like much for right now, but that is what we want it to look like at this stage. I'm going to do the same at the very top one. And we're gonna let that dry. And I just need to wait one more moment for my bottom frosting layer to be dry here. Um, when it's dry in between this bottom frosting layer just at the bottom and the cupcake liner, we can actually paint the cake. And that is going to be with our yellow ochre, our burnt sienna, and our black. Just needs to be dry at the bottom most part of the frosting. It's okay if it's still a little bit wet up top. And then, of course, dry at the little toothed section of our cupcake liner. And I'm going to start by putting a nice amount of the yellow ochre right on in. And I'm getting right on in here with my burnt sienna, that more brown color. And when you start to come in with the black at this very top part for the shadow, just be careful that you only get a little bit of it on your brush and that you're not overly wet in this area anymore. You need to blend it out with a little more of that burnt sienna. Always do that. Just wanting to get some shadow. I'm gonna stop messing with that now. And just make sure that you're not overworking that area. You don't want to get too much in there. And I'm coming in to that third, I'm sorry, well, it's the second layer in between, but our third that we're painting layer of frosting. Getting it wet once again. And just dabbing that yellow ochre mix that we made. And I'm going to let that be. And one more time, I'm going to come into this cupcake liner with that red that we made. The difference is that this time I'm doing it wet on dry. So this is completely dry as I'm coming on in to put more color down. And I don't mind it being hard lines that we're doing. This is that red that we mixed. Got some nice shading in there. We will come back one more time into that, but for now we can just let that be. And I just want everyone to make sure that they still have enough of that yellow ochre color mix. If you need to make a little bit more, it was the yellow ochre, some burnt sienna, and some black. Gonna look at the frosting. And I want to just barely touch my brush to it. So there's not really much in the way of paint on it right now, and that's what I wanted. And we can start adding these little swirls. Remember, barely touching it. And you can also start bringing in just a little bit of that black. It's more like a gray. I'm still using that barely touching it technique. Go a little too dark, you can always just clean your brush and come in with some water and go right over it to blend it out a little better. The same for the rest of these frosting blobs. I am just coming in with that yellow ochre color and blending it out from where those two areas are sitting. And really defining these areas where these frosting blobs are sitting is a good key to getting it look like they are three different sections. And I've been building this up as we go because it's easier to come back in and make it darker than it is to try and make it lighter. Coming back in with that black. You just have to do it very gently. Don't go too overboard here. We can always come back. I'm just gonna have us stop on this frosting stuff for a little bit, just so that we can start looking at something else so we don't get too caught up in doing this part. Looking at the wrapper one more time, if you could bring a little bit more of that red that we mixed. And I just want to add a little bit of black to it so that it turns into more of a dark red. If you even want to just gently tap in a little bit of blue in it, you can. Totally your call. That is a dark red that works. And I want to come back in here with it. And I'm trying to follow my pencil lines. I'm not going up too high. This is just to get more shadow. So we are done with our wrapper. And whenever you are ready to come in and fill the heart with water, and just right on the paper, I'm going to put in both of those pink red colors, and I'm just mixing it straight in here. If you want to give it some heart sprinkles in other places, you can. Just make sure nothing is still wet. And if you're still working on areas of this cupcake, that is fine. But if you wanted to give it some fun stuff in the background, I'm gonna come on in and show you how so that you know it is optional. I'm going to do this by just putting down some water. You can leave it just on the white of the paper, that's totally fine. Obviously, everything that I'm going near currently is dry. And I'm coming in just with that pink. Again, completely optional. You do not need to be doing this. I'm just using water to blend out any hard edges. can also be turning this if you need to. You could also be doing this with any other color. I just thought the pink would look nice. You can give it some little bit of shadow. And just again, optional if you wanted to give it some splattering. I'm just getting my brush really wet and full of the color. Gives it a nice fun texture. And yeah, if you like your, your frosting and your decorations on all that stuff, whenever you hit that point, then you're all set. And that's about it.
If anyone wants to share their art, we'd love to see it. Also, if you want to send me a photo of your art, I did collect some photos from the last class, and I'll collect some from this class as well, and I'll plan to do a post showcasing some of the art from both classes that we've had in the last few weeks. So if you want to send me a photo of your art, you could just email it to me. And I don't know if anyone wants to show their art tonight.
Maybe if we want to stop recording, maybe people will be more comfortable.
Good idea. Let me do that.